All right, we are back on What the Funk after a mini hiatus that included for me a family vacation over spring break to Paris, France. That was awesome, really awesome. Then canceling and postponing Curtis successfully, maybe 2 or 3 different times. Thank you, Curtis, for being patient with that. And now we're back. Now we're back. The snow's melted. We're past the winter doldrums here in Colorado. It looks like a beautiful Friday. So super excited to be back on the podcast. And Curtis, you're somebody that I only met, I think, maybe once, maybe twice before this. But as you were kind of telling me your story, headed out to a meeting, I'm like, man, this guy's got a lot to talk about. He's got a big personality. You've kind of worked your way up the ranks at EAG, which is one of the top, if not the top, oil and gas consulting firms. And you've got a really interesting background. I think I'm not going to steal all your thunder, but Houston kid, you did some time in the military, you picked up technology, you've done a lot of different things. And I was like, yeah, I think, A, I think you're a natural storyteller. B, I think you've got some fun things to talk about. So, just based on the time we spent together, I'm like, man, we could talk all day. So I wanted to feature you, have you come on the podcast and just tell everybody the Curtis Forsythe, right?
Forsyth, yep.
Yeah, that's not as easy as Forsyth. A lot of people might go with Forsythe.
I get a lot of that. I'm like, look, I know who you're talking to, so we can keep going. Like,
let's just roll.
Call me whatever you want, as long as I know that you're talking to me.
Exactly. We'll just go with Curtis. But I'll ask you the question that I ask all of my guests: is who are you? Who is Curtis Forsythe?
I ask myself that question all the time, and I always come up with a different answer. But I don't know. Generally speaking, I don't know. I'm probably I like to think I'm a normal guy. I'm a doofus just as much as anybody else. A hypocrite just as much as anybody else. I really enjoy my job. I like helping people out. I've got a great family, wife and kids. It's funny. Everybody's like, you're like, who are you? And they're always, the first answer is like, oh, first of all, I'm a husband and a father. I'm like, yeah, man, that's great. But like, who really are you? Like, what do you do? Like, that's kind of an easy way to get out of that question. I don't know. I don't know. I like working with people and I like solving problems and I like puzzles and I fidget. I can't sit still for too long. I tend to talk too much in meetings, so I have to like consciously reel back. Just a normal person, I guess.
Yeah, a normal person, but there's some layers to that. So let's go all the way back, right? I think you said you grew up in Houston and then you went to the military. So walk me a little bit through your upbringing and then how you ended up in the military, what you did in the military. It's always fascinating to me. And then you came out and got into technology, I think. But yeah, kind of walk me through the younger days and then, kind of through your early adulthood.
Yeah, sure. Sure. Let's see. From Houston. I'm from Pearland, actually a little bit south of Pearland, Manville. We're getting real out into the wilderness here. But I say that, but it's all built up out there now. But anyways, I'm from Pearland, graduated from Pearland. Chris and my wife, we graduated from this. We went to high school together, been married for 18 years now, 19 years. And then, I was interested in computers and IT for as long as I can remember. I was probably like 8 or something. I remember I got an old IBM desktop computer with a leather carrying handle, and it didn't even have a hard drive in it. Like the operating system booted on one floppy drive, and then you could load other things onto another floppy drive. You loaded it in a RAM, did your thing, saved it on a floppy drive. Like it was, and ever since then, I've always enjoyed computers. I got out of high school. I tried college, and that really wasn't my deal. I was an ROTC when I was in high school, so I knew I was going to join the military. My family, grandfather was in the Army, then he retired from the police department. My uncle, like everybody, military family, all the friends that my parents had, a lot of them were in the Army or police department or stuff like that. So I just kind of knew that's what I was going to do. And then I was going to go to college and try the ROTC thing. And it was just too I don't know. I didn't have a good time. It just didn't seem, I don't know, authentic, I guess maybe is the word. I just was like, this is kind of like, it doesn't feel real. Like I wanted a real job and to make real money. Um, and then also I was really immature and didn't go to school and didn't know what I was doing and just kind of sort of just, for lack of a better term, fucked around for a little while. And then I got done with that. I was waiting tables at a Mexican food restaurant, and I was like, yeah, it's time to join the Army. I was like, I knew I was going to do it. And I'm actually glad I did it that way now, years and years and years later, after, being in the Army, becoming an NCO and stuff like that. And you see, as an NCO, we have a probably not great, but it's always a bit of a, we sort of like give people a hard time if you come straight in from ROTC as an officer. They're like, oh yeah, you're an officer. That's cool, man. But, the phrase always is like, I've got boots that have been in the Army longer than you have. So like, I understand that I report to you and you're here to do things, mostly paperwork. But yeah, I'm glad I did that, man. I honestly was just kind of done and didn't know what I was going to do. So I sold everything I owned. My car, I didn't have a cell phone. I gave all my clothes and all that other kind of stuff away and joined the Army and went to Fort Benning for basic training, infantry school or infantry basic training there. And then I went to AIT, learned IT. That's what I did the whole time. Airborne school, got stationed on Fort Bragg. I was really lucky. Just kind of like I had opportunities to do things in my career. So I got being, in communications, but also being airborne qualified, being stationed on Fort Bragg gives you a lot of opportunity to do things that are outside of like, typical sort of Army things. Mm-hmm. So I got to work with other units, and there's a lot of, obviously it's Bragg, so there's a lot of special operations and stuff like that. And we did joint communications school and things like that. And then the unit that I was in, we got to test some new equipment. We tested these things called data packages that had just, where we were testing them out in the field to see if these things would work. So I had a good time, man. And then my wife and I got together, we got married and had kids, and it just got too much. I couldn't do that. It wasn't fair to really, it'd be like, hey, we're going to go on a training mission. It's 2:00 in the morning. So get your shit together and let's go. And then I'll be back in 2 weeks. Yeah, you know what I mean? Or something like that. And it was kind of hard. But yeah, I had a good time. I deployed a couple times, got to go to Korea and stuff like that. So it was good. Then I got out and started doing IT consulting pretty much ever since then. Just working my way up.
That's cool. So you were in the Army, but you focused on the technology stuff. So it was kind of a nice fit, right? You tried the college thing, realized fairly quickly it wasn't for you, waited some tables, realized you had to grow up maybe a little bit. And the Army provided the right outlet for that, not only from a discipline perspective, but also from the ability to jump into technology. And what's kind of funny is when you and I were in the car together, I started giving you my story about my career. And the first job that I had was selling storage area networks that ran over IP.
Yeah.
In Boulder, Colorado. You go, was it Left Hand Networks? I'm like, what? How'd you know that? He's like, oh God, I hated those systems. Which is funny because, I think the large majority of people that I start, with that story too, it's to provide the punchline of, well, it was $20,000 for a terabyte of data storage. Yeah. Now on your phone, it's like $2.49. Yeah. That has changed. And it was obvious that was going to change, but you actually like interacted with these data storage boxes. So you sort of learn that hands-on, and, sorry for whoever sold you that deal that it wasn't, it wasn't good.
It could have been you, man. Who knows?
I was a little peon. They wouldn't let me talk to anybody of actual like decision-making capability at that point, but maybe I cold called you. I don't know.
Maybe I remember when HP bought Left Hand, and we were like, come on guys, what are y'all doing? And they worked I didn't like them. I hated working on them. They were hard. It was like the first foray into like this sort of, like VMware has a thing called a vSAN, like a virtual SAN. And it was supposed to have redundancy, and it's over IP, and you could do different storage types, block and file, and all kinds of stuff like that. And it was just like the first iteration, or really the first sort of like part of the first generation. And some NetApp did great at it. They were successful. left hand, not so much. They got bought. But I don't know. I mean, maybe that is a success story. Is everybody there and all the folks that ran the show, they walked away with what they wanted to get, I guess. But
yeah, I mean, maybe it's one of those things where you know you have a good idea, but you're constrained by the amount of money you can put into something to develop it. So you do some things on the cheap. You prove out the fact that it works, and then you actually flip it to a bigger company that might be able to take it somewhere further. So I have no idea where all of that went. But yeah, really, really fascinating that our early days somehow intertwined, whether we realized it or not. Talk to me about oil and gas. Like, when did you're obviously, a Houston area person. It feels like it was inevitable you were going to touch oil and gas, but we didn't talk about it to this point. So you got out, you did IT consulting.
mm-hmm.
When did you start getting exposed to the oil and gas industry?
Well, so it's funny. I did a whole, what's the ancestry.com sort of deal. And I didn't even find this out until later on that like my great grandfather, like half my family on my dad's side was in oil and gas. Lubbock and Odessa and like all the whole area, like right in there for generations. And then, I got out of the Army and started just doing regular IT consulting. And it was right before and right around the time that managed services started to become a thing. Before, it was just hourly IT consulting, right? And there wasn't a lot of proactive monitoring and blah, 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 blah. And that kind of stuff came out. And then I started doing that for oil and gas companies because we were in Houston. And then I just got really interested in it. And then I started to realize that the military experience of jumping radios and doing radio systems and satellite systems and these things, node centers, networking, switching and voice communications, like we had to do all of that. We had to know the full piece to do our job, was really similar to like field SCADA-comms.
Okay.
And I just thought it was really, I like that sort of thing. Radio systems and, microwave point-to-point radio shots, like that's what we did in the Army. We had to know all the stuff, and it easily translated over into field comms. And it's not just the technology, it's also kind of sort of like the way to work. Like there's IT in the field and there's comms in the field. And even back then, today, a lot of the I&E techs like know a little bit about networking and a little bit about radios and also the like how to use a total flow and all kinds of stuff like that. And it just really translated very easily because the way the work was like, just get it done, get out there, get the work done. Like it's important to move forward. Like I enjoyed putting my hands on equipment and going out to the field and stuff like that. And so I just kind of sort of, I think, naturally gravitated to that. And then that led into things like more, actual consulting and moving up, doing, building VMware cloud environments for people and then understanding how the actual oil and gas industry works. You know what I mean? It's interesting. Oil and gas accounting is a total pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So I found all those there. So it was an easy transition to me. And then, so probably right around, I don't know, 2010, 2012 is when things started to pick up for oil and gas. And then I'd say probably the last 10 years or so have been really specific, but we still, even today where I work, we still do IT for other companies.
Right.
IT's IT. It's funny. Like I always joke about like, how come is IT is the one, not, I say this in an idealistic sort of view, but IT seems to be the only sort of like discipline that is required to know how everybody else's job and systems work.
Kind of.
Nobody has to know how our stuff works. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, man. I don't know computers, and I don't know how to, an email and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, well, you probably should start to learn because the world's changing all around you. And we all need to know a little bit more about technology. But we have to know all of that. Right. Yeah. We have to know how production works. We have to know how ops works and all the way from, all the way up, through that whole system, because we can't do good consulting and we can't do a good job if we don't know how those things work. We can't build infrastructure and tell you what kind of software is better for your business and how you run all that other kind of stuff. So I just always thought it was super interesting, but I just like it no matter what. I like manufacturing too. It's great. I like those sorts of like, I guess you could say like dirty industries is what people say is I like that kind of stuff. Transportation is great. Like my dad and my grandparents were all truck drivers. Even on my wife's side, there's truck drivers and stuff like that in the family. So that's kind of sort of where I live and the people that I'm around. So I enjoy that. I don't really like doing consulting and IT work for, the medical field, but yeah, that's it. That's kind of sort of how I got into oil and gas. Like it just happened to it's always been a part of my life, especially growing up in Houston. So
yeah, I like the way that you talked about, and I would consider that sort of IT in the field, operational technology, right?
yeah,
And you immediately realize like, hey, wait a second, there's some like real similarities to what happens in military from a communications devices standpoint, which is kind of neat. That's I didn't really think about that, but it makes sense. So you just sort of picked up on it quickly. You're like, oh, I see what you're going for here. Like this isn't too different. Yeah, you're looking for different data points, but I got you.
Yeah, I mean, we were deployed in Iraq and we were shooting, like we had a team that was part of this system and they do our LOS radios and, it's 10, 15, 20 kilometer point to point shots to send comms data over. And I mean, that is tower to tower comms out in the field. You know what I mean? It's just so easily translatable. And then, I got into the private sector and started working on stuff like that. And I'm just, some of it too, I was like, man, you guys got good stuff. Like this is nice. So
you guys invested in this stuff, huh?
Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, we tested, back then, even today still, like the military's always been about like, there's equipment specifically made for it. It's got to be ruggedized, right? Like plugs are, have dust covers and you have to screw things in and it's, you could drop it and not worry about it. Like we would literally drop gear out of airplanes and then set them up and use them, right? Like that was what we did. Sure. And it was all, fine. And then we started testing out some of the commercial stuff, Cisco gear and Prominas and stuff like that. And started, we were kind of sort of like the folks that were trying this out in the field and go out into Camp McCall outside of Fort Bragg and set it up in the dirt and see what happens with it. And it gets dusty and stuff worked okay. So we started adopting a lot of that stuff, like a regular, like the Cisco IP phone that you see on your desk is the same phone that we had out in the field. You know what I mean? And they worked. Sure. And it's funny nowadays, some of the IT folks and stuff like that, oh, you can only run Cat 5 300 feet or 300 meters or whatever. Or it's like, oh, it's too hot in there and it won't run. And like, it's like, man, I put bags of ice on top of shit before to keep it from, like, it'll be just fine. Now, obviously that's like an extreme case, like in the event of an emergency, you know what I mean? But it's interesting how like the difference between, what is like the standard and what's required as to what the gear can actually do comes out. And then once again, like out in the field, like you stretch the gear out a lot. I mean, we've got just people go buy a Linksys switch and throw it in a box in the 100-degree West Texas heat. And it'll last about a year and then it'll break and die. And then I'm like, yeah. You probably should get a real, like an IE 3000 or something from Cisco, like a proper outside switch that can handle the gear. So, but anyways.
That's funny. Yeah. I like how you told that story and how everything sort of comes back to, how do things work in certain weather conditions? And there are extreme conditions, of course, in oil and gas, whether it's like extremely cold or extremely hot, but you still need communications. And that keeps the business running, keeps it going. Talk to me a little bit about EAG. When did you join EAG? How did you meet EAG? And like, talk to me about your career progression there.
It's a fun story. So I work for a company. I worked at the Aldridge company as an IT consultant for years and years and years. And even how I got there is an interesting story. But basically EAG was a client of ours.
Okay.
While I was at this company. So we did their IT and they outsourced IT to us. Huh. And then, I left, went to do other things and kind of years went by. And then a friend of mine that I worked at Aldridge with, was like, hey, I'm at this company called EAG, starting doing IT outsourcing, like come work for us. And I actually took him a couple times. I was like, yeah, I'm good. Because I got a little bit burnt out on IT outsourcing and consulting and stuff like that. And I went to like, I guess, corporate IT is the word, but
sure.
it was nice and relaxing. It was just boring too. But so he called and called, and I was like, okay, like even some folks from EAG reached out and were like, hey, we're starting this thing. And I came and I was like, this is great. It's a good company. And Elizabeth, our CEO, her idea of how to do it was different. And knowing that, we were kind of focused in a vertical, what she wanted to deliver to the customers was, I agreed with the thought process. One of the reasons I got so burnt out on IT was just because I was just like, it's all about throwing your lowest level, cheapest person.
Right.
And it's almost like it maybe not maliciously or like purposefully, but you make users go through like this gamut of bullshit to just get help with their computer.
Yeah.
And the thought process was like, we're not going to do that. We're going to hire experienced people and we're going to pay them an appropriate price. We're going to treat them like adults and they're going to sit on the desk. Like all of our people on our service desk are all tier 3s. And the thought process and my expectation with the team is that you solve any problem that you want or that comes across your desk. We focus on small to medium business, which means it's not overly complex. It's not a lot going on. We then learn the apps and focus on oil and gas. And then basically, if you're a tier 3 and you reset passwords all day, like, man, great, easy day. And if not, if like we've got a real problem, server outage or something that's not easy, it's not like you're like, oh, I have to escalate your ticket to some other person and then just go through and, like that was the thing that really sold me. I just felt like we weren't, the thought process in managed services, and even it is today for a lot of companies, is consistently good service. And I'm like, that's not really, some people are okay with that. I just want to deliver just great service for, for an appropriate price and just be done with it. So I started just as a consultant at EAG, moved up, started running the projects team. Things changed and kind of sort of ended up where I'm at today is vice president of IT. And sometimes still I'm like, yeah, that's real. We're doing this, and there's a lot of stuff I could do better. I'm learning just like everybody else is going. I really enjoy it. It's not easy. It's not, it's one of those deals where like you're as a, and you know how this goes. You sit back and you're like, man, what are these people doing? If I were in charge, I would do this. And, you know what I mean? And then now I'm looking back now and it's kind of like you're becoming your parent. You're like, oh man, that's why, like, man, I'm saying some shit that the guy that I didn't agree with said. And a couple of months ago.
It's kind of funny, right? It's like you're like, who said that was my mom's voice. That wasn't even me.
Basically.
So what is a vice president of IT at a growing consulting firm do? Like, what does your day-to-day look like? Is it just completely different every single day? Is it really, really similar on a daily basis? Like, what do you do, man?
It's similar in that I just do a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Because we have a fairly large size corporate IT team as well, because, we do consulting, BPO, business process outsourcing, and IT consulting, app support, a little bit of development with Power BI and, data analytics, right? There's a lot of all that is there. And so, working with the corporate IT team to keep the outsourced accounting going, because we host and manage. If we don't host, we manage all of the apps and systems that we use to do that, sure, including the reports and the data warehousing and all that. So that's a team. And then trying to do sales and working with marketing to account management, to all the way to helping out. Sometimes when the team gets overloaded, like I'll build a server, like, you know what I mean? Like I can still work and do the same consulting. And, I'm a big proponent of sort of like not asking people necessarily to do something that you're not capable of doing yourself.
Yep.
I really like that. I learned that when I was in the Army, and so I just do a lot of different things. It's all within the IT space. It's all, similar, is from, honestly, sometimes from invoicing problems. Like if our people aren't keeping time right, then we send an invoice to a client. I'm like, whoa, yeah, you're right. We shouldn't be billing that shit. And then sometimes it's just like helping with cybersecurity insurance or doing consulting work to help people get on the right path, or, deciding whether or not a risk is acceptable, like and not just always pushing stuff onto people, to personnel problems and working with that, and onboarding and interviewing, and all of the things that go within that realm, is really what my day-to-day life looks like. But thankfully, I've got a really good team, like a really good team that gets stuff squared away, and I'm not like in everybody's business all the time. I don't
Yeah.
really, feel like I'm being pulled in a bunch of different directions. I've got a list of stuff to do, right? Always have a list of stuff to do. Like there's always something going on, but it's not, we don't have too many emergencies or anything like that. So it's not too bad. That's pretty normal, I think, for a lot of people. Hopefully it is normal. I really like my job. I work a lot, and that's usually just because it's stuff that I'm interested in. Like it's really nice to have a
Right.
job to where, it's like, oh, hey, let's look into some AI stuff, or or just play with data sometimes and just kind of floof around and see what we can do. And then I had to go back and do my real job, but that's about what it's like most of the time.
Yeah, that's cool. So do you feel like you still have time to fulfill your curiosity around the emerging technology stuff? Like, yeah, you mentioned AI. You probably touch automation a little bit in terms of what you guys support on the managed services side.
Yep.
But do you feel like you get to tinker as much as you'd want in your life now? Yeah.
No. Man, if I had all the money in the world, that's all I would do all day, is just, and it, honestly, personally, it's not that I like I like cars. I like to work on cars. We're doing stuff in the house. I like to build. I like woodworking and mowing the yard. I actually enjoy mowing the yard. It's nice and it's very centering. And I can listen to an audiobook. And so if I didn't have if I didn't have a real job, I would just tinker and just basically, as my wife says, I would just putter around the house all day because I can't really sit still. So I'm always doing something. And that would be great, man. I can't wait until I'm old and retired and just kind of sort of just shuffle around and just mess with stuff all day. So
you'll probably be in the metaverse at that point. So who knows?
That's not my style. It's funny. I don't do a lot of that. I do like technology, and I like to write SQL queries and pull data out of our system to see how things are working and trying to use the information that we have. I like architecting. I like working in Azure and architecting environments and building servers and integrations and understanding reporting, all that. And networking, I really like networking. I like all of that. But I wouldn't call myself like a technophile guy person or whatever. Like, hopefully nobody knows where I live, but we don't even have an alarm system at the house. It's just, I think technology is great. And it is an augmenter, a force multiplier, as they say, to being a human being, but it shouldn't necessarily be like all ruling. You know what I mean? Like we have cameras that we put up because we went on vacation. We go on vacation, so I like that. But man, that's it. Like I don't fiddle around too much with stuff. I do play video games. Don't get me wrong. I play a lot of video games too, but yeah.
Well, you got kids. You got kids. You can play video games with your kids. I'm sure they like that.
Yeah, I would say that, except that my wife and I are usually the ones that play video games together by ourselves.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Anytime I played a video game when my wife and I were like dating or early marriage, she's like, what a nerd. Like, I just like playing Madden. Leave me alone.
No, it's, we both play quite a bit.
That's really fun. Fun.
It's good.
So talk to me now about like, the future. What do you see in terms of oil and gas? Because in some ways you're on the cutting edge. In some ways you're just keeping things running. Like what are some things that you've seen change, some trends, some evolution in terms of oil and gas? Because people say, they see you and they say, oh, cool. This is like an IT guy in oil and gas. I can ask questions, right? Are people coming to you with more questions around AI in terms of automation, in terms of like Uberization of the oil field? Like, where do you, from where you sit, kind of see things evolving into?
It's a cycle, especially on AI. Like even Gartner's released, they have the thing called the hype cycle.
Sure.
And we're on the upward trend of that right now. It comes and goes all the time. Like predictive analytics and all this jazz was all the rage 15 years ago. I went to a conference in Redmond, a Microsoft conference that was talking about using predictive analytics and like nonlinear math to sort of figure out when elevator motors were going to go
That's
out
cool. Yeah.
predictively. That was 15 years ago, right? The barrier to entry and the actual pieces and all this other kind of jazz wasn't there. But I don't know. For me, it's true. People do come and ask questions. The number one is cybersecurity, right? That's top of mind for everybody right now. And I think given the way that the world is moving, that's going to be even more important as we go forward. But AI, most people don't ask me about AI. I would be honest, I'm not an AI fanboy. And most people that know me know that about me. I think it has a great place, but I don't think it's the answer to all of the world's problems. So that's really not my style for that. And, I just think that we'll get back to normal sort of operations. Yeah, it's just like any other thing. Like we're going to throw all this. I mean, the number of AI companies that say that they're going to revolutionize what you do in the last year or two is just blown up, right?
For sure.
And I think it's the same deal that we had like in the 90s, right? Everybody and their mom was starting some web thing. And I mean, you remember like how many search engines were there in 1998?
Oh, I used to in 1998 exactly. I can picture sitting at my desk as a freshman in college using something called Dogpile.
Yeah.
I don't know if it still exists. There was Ask Jeeves,
Alta Vista.
Alta Vista, yeah.
Right? All that. Yahoo, AOL still had their thing. Google was just getting started, right? So I think that's where things are going to end up. And I think what we'll find is standard sort of like field ops and stuff like that. There's not really a lot of shift there. I know there's a big deal about like this digital twin, right? And edge computing and all this other kind of stuff. And that's a way to get a little bit better at it. But those are like, basically big super major investment opportunities and stuff like that. And there are people that are trying to get out to the small guys now to do that. But I think the technology is not fully fleshed out, right? Just like anything else, like how many years, 5 years ago, now today, we still have folks out in the field with like 600 megahertz Datadog radios, not IP, right? Straight up just regular old school comms. And it works and it's simple. And when it breaks, you replace it. It's cheap and you move on. You know what I mean? So I think we're going to see a pullback on, the complexity and sort of like the add to all of this technology on top of things. I think sometimes we find that this is great, this is great, this is great. And it starts to obfuscate and put this layer between what's real and what you see. And we're going to get back to where we'll find where, digital twin, edge computing, AI, we'll find what it's good at. And then that'll just get integrated into the world that we've already seen it. I think we're going to move up, right? Like we always do, but it's going to go up and down as we sort of move forward with it. I think, everybody and their mom has a large language model out, right? That's that's like the new arms race. And we'll probably find that we'll end up with a few that are the big dogs that everybody uses. And the people that are smart will figure out how to improve and add to and make those things on their own. I think what we'll find is not like this general, this retrieval, augmented generation, the RAG stuff like that. And I think I said that wrong. But anyways, we'll find out that it's not just good at doing general stuff. I think what we'll see are expert systems, right?
Yeah.
Like the company that builds a model specifically for this thing, such as, analyzing well performance or something like that, that is trustworthy and that works, will be the ones that sort of like move up. And then what you'll find is that you just can't have a million of those.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right. You find the one that's the best and you ask questions of that and start to really train that model and hone it in.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned very early on in this podcast, we went to Paris and really got to test out, I think, the amazingness that is ChatGPT. We make fun of my wife because we're like, it's your best friend. Because she just asks it we asked her a question. We're like, oh my God, we know what's next. And she's like, hold on one second. And she's like, reads the answer basically. But, there were points where we're standing at a street corner in a city that we've all never been to before, and we're going to eat lunch. And she goes in and says, within 0.2 of a mile of where I'm standing, like, tell me 3 restaurants that are highly rated, good for family, have fast service, and are relatively affordable.
Yeah.
And it comes back, right, and gives answers. And then she's like, oh, so those are great, but we're in Paris, so we'd like to focus on like a French place if we possibly could, again, with the same criteria. And then boom, 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 these 3 places. And you end up going to one of them and have a great experience. And you're like, that was pretty cool, right? Like that. What would your options be before? It's you just go to Google, you type something in, restaurants near me, French restaurants near me. It starts to come up. You start going through and clicking and reading the reviews. Well, just have ChatGPT do that for you, right? So I thought that was kind of cool. And really the first time we've used that as a family like that,
I have a question then on that.
Yes.
Is that artificial intelligence or just a really good search engine?
That's a really good search engine, but it saved us time. So I'm not
for sure it does. Yeah. No, I don't disagree. I just, to me, it is, because it pulls all of the data, which Google does, and this, that, and the other. And I mean, the worst thing that could happen, sorry, I keep eating chips and then choking on them. The worst thing that could happen is that they figure out how to monetize this, and then they're going to start to steer you into where they want you to be steered into.
You got to pay for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or, well, if you want, if you pay us, just like Google Ads, you want to be at the top of the page. You want to be more heavily weighted with AI.
You want to be seen, right?
You want to be seen, right?
You want to get the best possible answer. And for what it's worth, my wife does the $20 a month ChatGPT thing because, again, it's her best friend. Okay. Well, it's her best friend.
Right? All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. I use it, and it does cool. It's great. In my role, and this is new to me, and this is the first time I've been a vice president of anything. I was, like vice president of my front yard for as long as I can live. And that was about it.
Still are.
And so, I mean, it's very, very helpful and beneficial, but just like anything else, I tell all of our people this, read what you're, you know what I mean? It's not the gospel truth. Right. And it's getting people in trouble. You know what I mean? I had a conversation with a client yesterday about contract analysis using AI, and great, but you still have to have a human being read it. It's not going to replace that. And you have to be super careful about, like there's, and these are edge cases. This is an anecdote. It's not sort of like the world that we live in, but like there are law firms and people with law degrees that have gotten in trouble and presented fake, precedence cases to court because ChatGPT was generated some shit. Right. So
yeah, no, and it's even simple things sometimes too. Like we're checking into the hotel and my wife's like, what time is it back in Denver? And I just kind of looked at her like, I know where your next question's going with that. What time is it in Denver to ChatGPT? And it said 8:30. And I'm like, it was 1 o'clock on the nose or whatever. I'm like, there's a half-hour time zone thing between here and Colorado. And she's like, well, let me ask you. She's like, are you sure? Because it's exactly 1 o'clock here. It's like, oh, whoops. Sorry about that. It's actually 8 a.m. in Denver. And I was like, whoa. She's like, yeah, it's wrong sometimes.
It is. And
that's like a simple question. I don't know. That was surprising to me.
I use, I can do math things, but my sort of like memorized arithmetic isn't probably that good. But like, it's kind of like, okay, well, is it also, or is it, maybe better, more beneficial to be able to say what time zone am I in and just do some math? So, I think that's hard. It is, this same conversation yesterday with one of our clients about it, just kind of AI in general. And I think it's the best analogy to me is like, 60 years ago, you built houses with hammers.
Right.
Right. And today we build them with nail guns.
Right.
You don't replace the human. You don't replace the design. You don't replace you have to know what you're doing. It's a tool to increase productivity, not necessarily a tool to replace. Now, that doesn't mean that AI will replace things and people, and it can do a lot of work. And I think eventually we will find that it will wholeheartedly replace individual roles and jobs. But I don't know. The world's not as cut and dry as people want it to be. And the only way for a system like that to really fit is it's got to be pretty cut and dry. It's got to be trainable. You got to be able to measure the quality of the output and all this other kind of jazz. And honestly, like the world's a freaking messy place and we're all like just a bunch of monkeys. And there's no such thing as like a, black and white sort of deal. I live in that world a lot, but
I understand that from a technology perspective, you do, but humans live in a gray area, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of these tech apps live in a black and white area. So until they can come to our gray area without hallucinating, then there's probably always going to be pushback. Anyways, enough about AI. That was fascinating stuff, though. I'm glad that we went down that path because we don't have a ton of time, and I want to dig into the fact that you are a Tesla fanboy. Would you consider yourself Would you consider yourself a Tesla fanboy? Let me ask you first. No?
No.
Explain yourself.
I like my Tesla. I wouldn't call myself a fanboy because before this I had BMWs. My son's got one. It's up on the lift in the garage right now. We're working on it. And I never thought I would own an electric car. And I didn't have a good reason for it other than I was like, man, I ain't buying that shit.
There was no. I mean, I'm sort of like, well, I work in oil and gas. I shouldn't have an electric car, which is like, that doesn't really make sense. What powers the grid anyway? But
it doesn't. And actually, I've got one. I mean, you know me, man, I got a lot of opinions on a lot of shit. I've got opinions on that too. But honestly, I just started looking into it and I told myself, I was like, not going to do it unless it's the one that is kind of makes you want to vomit a little bit because it accelerates so fast. It's funny. Like I have this sort of personal, like, I guess, scale that I've sort of lived in. I've been in my stepdad worked at a body shop. I grew up working on cars, drove before I had a license, all this thing. I had 3-wheeler, the whole deal, like very South Texas, Manville, Pearland, redneck sort of thought process, trailer park stuff. And so I've always been into that. And then I got in the Army and sort of like maybe opened up my view a little bit. And I wasn't just a Chevy guy and I didn't believe that V8s were the only thing to go. And then I got an M3 when I was in the Army. The old used cheap M3 was still an amazing vehicle. And then, my rule is like, if I'm going to get a car, it's got to be either faster or more powerful than the one that I had before. And my previous twin turbo V8 was getting kind of hard to beat. And by beat, I mean, I'm not going to spend a stupid amount of money on trying to get there. I found this thing cheap, used, and test drove it and was like, fuck, okay, this is good. It's stupid. And then I got used to it. I installed a 60 amp circuit in the garage, got the 240 charger, wired all that up. I park, I plug it in. I change my electric plan to free nights and weekends and it charges overnight. It cools the cabin down for me when I'm ready to come out into the car in the morning. You can set a timer, and it's super super bougie and some stuff like that. And I like it. It's nice. I still miss having an actual motor, and I don't get to work on it as much. It's not like I get to do things to it. You know what I mean? But it's fun. It's good for what I do. I live 45 minutes outside of downtown, and I work downtown, so. It's nice. I like it. I wouldn't call myself a fanboy. I don't know if I want to put myself in that bucket, but the last 30 seconds of me talking may actually negate that statement.
Well, so I guess I did that to get your goat a little bit too. I think you're more of a car guy, and I think a fanboy would say I'm fully converted. I'm only going to drive Teslas for the rest of my life. I don't get the sense that that's where you're at.
No. I mean, I like to think of myself as being relatively practical and pragmatic. And we have a Chrysler Town and Country minivan. It's one of the best vehicles ever made.
Minivans. Every time we go on vacation with 3 kids, we're like, minivan time, and we all love it.
I can put a 4x8 sheet of plywood back in that MFR and do whatever I need. I resodded. I got rid of some flower beds and resodded the yard a couple weeks ago. Just dumped a bunch of sod in the back of that thing and drove it. It's wonderful. You know what I mean? I'm like, man, I don't know. Trucks are cool, but really, do you need a truck if you're just going to get some stuff? Like, I don't need anything that's silly like that. Like my there's guys in my neighborhood that they've got like an F-350. And I'm like, dude, I've never seen you tow anything with that 350. It's cool. It's big. It's roomy. You know what I mean? I get it, but it's also stupid expensive.
But it's American.
It's American. It's true. I don't know. And people ask me that, like, well, you're in oil and gas. You got an electric car. And I'm like, I don't believe that that's a very sort of like, I think, I don't know. I'll probably say things that are mean and people are going to have comments about this. It just seems a little naive and almost immature thought process.
Sure.
Because it's not about oil or coal or gas or whatever. It's about managing energy.
Yeah.
Right. And what's a more effective way to do that is, and what's a sometimes more fun way to do that. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I'm the same thing. I'm like, dude, the chances are that one of EAG's clients has taken natural gas out of the ground and it was used to put electricity into my car. So It's all there. I'm more interested in how we do better at managing energy, moving it around, storing it when it needs to be stored. I mean, if you look at it from like and I'm not a scientist or anything like that. I'm just a very, very uninformed amateur. But if you look at it from just a view of like efficiency, we're really, really, really awful at managing energy. Like even the combustion engine is an incredibly inefficient as what could be achieved. You know what I mean? Like it gets hot as fuck. Anything that gets hot as fuck is incredibly inefficient. Right? It's not all your energy that you've got that's in the molecules all going off into heat and stuff like that. Right? So I just think it's more about that than it is anything. And that's a really, really good excuse to say that I do like my Tesla because it's really fast.
Well played. Final couple questions for you. I'm always curious about this one, and I might have asked you this when we were hanging out. Is looking back on your life, what advice would you give to your younger self, the 18-year-old version, the 21-year-old version of yourself, as you look back and think through your life, think through your career? Like, what would you tell young Curtis Forsythe?
I don't know. Keep on trucking. Yeah. I mean, I'm honestly, I'm just super lucky. I don't know if I would tell myself to do any, like, I like what I've got. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, as far as like I've got it. And a lot of us probably do have this perspective. It's just not just me, obviously, but I mean, I didn't have a lot of money or anything when we were growing up. Yeah. You know what I mean? So sure. I'm almost in I don't want to be greedy about it either. Like I'm good. You know what I mean? I consider myself to be a successful person and I've got a great family. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like I would tell myself to like keep going, get the work done, right? Like you're gonna, my big thing honestly is I would almost I know how I was back then, and I've listened to your podcast, so I know that you understand this. I would give myself a pep talk. If I talked to myself 20 years ago, I'd be like, you'll be all right, man. You can do this. Keep it going. Right. Yeah. That's the advice that I got. It's like, you're going to get there. The future has a lot in store for you. Keep pushing. Tell everybody to just go pound sand and get the work done. Right. And I actually would probably end up, more successful or maybe just have a better outlook on life. But I don't know. I would probably think I would be like, man, Curtis from 20 years ago is kind of a douchebag, but no.
I think I could easily look back on myself in my early 20s, late teens and say the same thing, but that's just part of life's evolution. As long as you weren't like an extreme douchebag, I think it's okay. Yeah, I might even change that question moving forward too. Is like, if you could go back in time and you get like a brief snippet with your younger self and you could say 3 words to them.
Keep on trucking.
Keep on trucking for you. Mine might be bet on Brady.
There you go.
I'd have a lot more money if I did that.
I was going to say, I was like, what, buy Apple?
Buy Apple stock.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe distilling it down like that is what I'll do going forward. Anyways, Curtis, was a blast having you. Where can people find you? Where can people find your company? Give me like the quick elevator pitch for why somebody should do business with the EAG.
You should do business with EAG because we're really good at what we do. We're very pragmatic and very practical. And, we all try to sort of like understand what reality looks like and not just push a bunch of shit onto people. All right. That's the key and the easiest thing. We want to help people succeed and we want to succeed alongside them. Right. That's it. Right. We just want to move forward with everybody. EAGinc.com is our website. Reach out. The web team did a really good job. It looks great. There's lots of ways to get in contact. I have a Calendly link that if you just want to talk and ask me a bunch of questions or put a meeting on my calendar to tell me how all the stuff I said today was stupid, happy to do that. And then I'm on the LinkedIn as well. But that's about it.
I love it. When someone tells you to be succinct, you're very succinct. When someone gives you an open-ended question, you can take 15 minutes to answer. It's one of the things that I really like and admire and appreciate about you, Curtis. And final point on EAG. EAG is a special company to me. It was my first ever client with Funk Futures. We recently re-engaged end of 2024, and it's kind of like a homecoming of sorts. And the thing that has always stood out to me that's interesting about your organization is I'm not sure the exact numbers. I'd say probably between 80 and 85% of the business is repeat customers, right? Mm-hmm. Which is really like, why would you do business with this company? It's like, well, I mean, 83% of the people that have ever done business with us come back and do it with us again. And I think that's about as glowing a recommendation as you could possibly get. So it surprised me because I think everybody's focused on new logos, right? How do we get net new? How do we grow? How do we do this? Well, what if we just like deliver exceptional service to the people that do business with us?
Yeah.
We can kind of guarantee 83% of our business next year, So.
Yeah, for real. And I think it's a big testament to the team and Elizabeth and Chris and Eric and Ahmed and all the VPs and everybody at the company. Like we just
good folks.
We just want to do work, man. So
we do the work. All right, man. Curtis, thank you so much for coming on today. Curtis Forsythe.
Thanks.